Thank you all so much for the warm welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with all of you today, talking about an issue that I think is one of the defining issues, kind of reshaping the world of work. So let's get into it. Hello, PauseFest. I'm, as Omar shared, I'm in town from New York. I'm a member of the staff at General Assembly. We have some of the amazing members of the Melbourne team here. You should check out our space if you haven't been already. And I lead our social impact initiatives. So a little bit about General Assembly. We train adults for careers in the digital economy, software engineering, UX design, data science, digital marketing. We do this in a number of different ways, from one-off classes and workshops to part-time programs that are meant to really upskill folks and gain new skills, as well as career transformation programs that take somebody who's a relative novice in a field and gets them to be a hireable practitioner over a 12-week immersive program. And then we work very closely with these folks to help them get jobs. The reality is that for many people, the sort of idea of even becoming a software engineer feels very out of reach, especially if they haven't had the opportunities to explore these types of careers or even test these skills. I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. His name is Anthony Peggies. He has a really fascinating story. Grew up in a household, abusive father, single mom, really struggled academically throughout high school, and found some success as an amateur boxer. He won 2 Golden Gloves championships in New York City. This is one of the kind of premier amateur boxing awards. But after his athletic career ended, he really found himself sort of struggling to figure out what his next move would be. He ended up working as a janitor at his high school as a way to make money, and really felt sort of stuck and frustrated. Through a nonprofit organization, he learned a little bit about coding and started to explore that on his own, and decided it was something that he really wanted to pursue. But the barrier to be able to, get that kind of training was too much for him to do. So through a program that we run at General Assembly, through a partnership with the Department of Labor in the United States, we were able to underwrite and subsidize the cost of tuition for Anthony to pursue our 12-week software engineering program. Even though Anthony had never set foot in a college classroom, he was one of our top students. He was, stayed late at night every single day on our campus, working on his code, developing his projects, got a job at a hot startup. They underbid him for his salary, and we coached him to ask for more, and he got it. He just took on a new gig, and he's doing really well and thriving in the tech sector. But there are a lot of people like Anthony who have incredible potential, talent, capability, who for one reason or another don't have the opportunities to fully participate in this new world of work. And so that's why I want to talk to you a little bit about how all of us can sort of think about the ways that diversity, equity, and inclusion can be part of our own talent strategy. A little bit more about GA. This lovely, Benetton ad of our staff sort of speaks to the fact that, we really try to build an inclusive community of learners. It's very much embedded in our DNA. And I think for a lot of people, especially women, people of color, LGBTQ folks, the tech sector is very white and very male. And so I think we've really tried to build ourselves as a space where people can come together to learn, to gain a new set of skills, and then transform their careers, regardless of who they are, where they're come from. So let's get into it a little bit further. I'm going to ask all of you to take out a piece of paper, the notes app on your phone, and just very quickly just write down how you would define diversity, inclusion, and equity. I'm going to give you 1 minute to do this. There are no right or wrong answers, but I think sometimes these terms are conflated. And there's the distinctions between them aren't sort of well defined. So before we sort of talk about some of the solutions, I think it's important for us to really dig into what some of the problems are. I think as we talk about this too, I also sort of want to acknowledge my own identity in talking to all of you. Obviously, I'm a white cisgender man, which puts me in a position of privilege in many ways. I'm a member of the LGBTQ community, which puts me in some circles within a context of being adding to the diversity of a team. But I did want to say that because I think it's important as part of all of these conversations to acknowledge our own identities and the intersections of the different identities that shape who we are. So I'm going to ask just if people could shout out, define diversity. Anybody? Difference? Go ahead. What's up? It's a fact, okay? Anything else? Variety of representatives? Range? Okay. When we talk about diversity, it's the presence of difference within a given setting. You can have a diversity of species in an ecosystem, a diversity of clothing brands in your closet, or a diversity of opinions or experiences. And by the way, I want to give credit to Meg Bolger, who's a diversity, equity, inclusion consultant who has a really terrific article at our blog if you want to take a picture and follow that URL where she breaks all of this down really beautifully. But I think the thing that's really important about diversity is it has to exist within a system. Right? You can't have a diverse person or a diverse candidate. If you're an individual, you can't be, by definition, diverse. Diversity only exists within a broader system. And so a lot of times when we talk about this in the context of the new world of work, diversity is sort of treated as this end goal, right? It's virtuous. It's something we want to accomplish. It's something to be proud of. It certainly is, but there are limits to what diversity can do if there isn't also inclusion and equity. So I'm gonna dig into a little bit further. So how about, oh, it's the wrong way. Inclusion. Does anybody want to give me their definition of inclusion? Everyone belongs. Active. It's participation. Yep, that's great. Other ideas? Equal access. Very interesting. I like that. Anyone else? It's a choice. I like that. Inclusion is about folks with different identities feeling and or being valued, leveraged, and welcome within a given setting, like your team, your workplace, or your industry. There's a great quote by a woman named Verna Myers who says, diversity is being asked to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. And I think that that's really the sort of the crux of what we think about when we talk about inclusion. It's creating those spaces where people can show up as their full selves with the multiplicity of identities that they bring to the table and feel welcomed, valued, and included for those identities. Okay, so equity. How is equity different from diversity and inclusion? Does anybody have a definition? And then I'm gonna stop asking you after that. Exactly. Who else? Does anybody else have want to add to that? Being seen. I love that. Everyone's voice matters equally. So it really ensures that everybody has access to the same opportunities. It recognizes that advantages and barriers exist, and that as a result, we don't all start from the same place. And I think the important thing to talk about when talking about equity is it's a process. You can't really achieve it because I think we're always, striving to reach this goal, though we also have to recognize that actually getting there is always going to be impossible. And so I think that it really begins by acknowledging that unequal starting places, that people start from unequal starting places, and then we take active steps to correct those balances as best we can. This is another way of looking at it. This is an interesting illustration that became a bit of a meme online. And Craig Froley, who wrote about it, sort of talked about how he kind of put this image up and it kind of caught the attention of the internet and went viral very, very quickly. But I think it really nicely kind of reinforces this concept of, equality, everybody gets the same stuff, right? But the challenge is we may have different barriers in terms of what that stuff allows us to do, right? So the tall guy gets a great view of what's happening on the football field, whereas the short person who got the same thing as the tall guy can't enjoy the game. When you talk about equity, you're really sort of correcting for an imbalance, right? So tall guy's fine without a box, can enjoy the game. The middle-sized person has one box, and then the shortest person has two boxes, so that everybody can have the same shared experience. I think it's a useful graphic, and I think one that's sort of strengthened by this idea of justice, right? So these are the sort of like important things that we want to move away from just equality to thinking about equity, but true justice is when we remove the barriers for everyone altogether. So why does this matter? And I think it was really interesting for me learning a lot more about how these issues show up in the Australian context. And I obviously think about this somewhat biased through a very US lens, where these issues sort of show up in different ways than they do here. But the Diversity Council Australia has some really terrific data and stats on the ways that sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion issues show up in the workplace here. And I thought this was really striking in terms of, how many people think of themselves as, being biased or having discriminatory views against, underrepresented groups? Show of hands. Yeah, I didn't think so, right? I think we all really want to, especially in these spaces of innovation, um, technology startups where the diversity of lived experiences really helps us to ensure that we can build products and companies that really meet the needs of our customers. We think of ourselves as not sort of bringing these practices into play, but what it was striking to me, to the percentage of people who've experienced harassment or discrimination in the past year. This is 2019, right? It's double for people who are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, people with disabilities, non-Christians, LGBTQ folks. And I think it really sort of underscores the fact that this is an ongoing issue that all of us need to grapple with, even if it seems invisible or something that's not sort of directly related to our own lived experience day in, day out. I think this was especially striking for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island workers. This really speaks to those concepts of inclusion and equity, right? How can I show up as my authentic self at work every day in a way that allows me to be who I am? I know I've had to hide or change who I am to fit in at work, 29%. I've personally experienced discrimination or harassment in the past 12 months, nearly half. Then I've been ignored by people at work or treated as if I didn't exist, right? So these are deep and systemic issues. And obviously the way that they show up here in the Australian context is different than they do in the United States or Great Britain or other countries. But I think that by engaging with these issues, understanding these definitions and asking these questions, we can sort of start to grapple with these. So here's some solutions at work that really come from our own view of how we can sort of create more diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly within the tech space. So this is a picture of a few students from a program that we do with Adobe, one of our conference sponsors, called the Adobe Digital Academy. Adobe really developed this program as a response to a business problem, right? They didn't have enough people of color and women in their tech ranks, so they wanted to do something about it and really put their money where their mouth was by not just sort of having kind of a token approach to sort of adding more diversity to their teams, but really making deep and meaningful investments in new pipelines of talent. So they developed this program. We co-created it, called the Adobe Digital Academy. In the Adobe Digital Academy, we recruit from nonprofit organizations throughout the Bay Area that work with folks from underrepresented and overlooked groups. Students who make it into the program participate in General Assembly's 12-week software engineering program. At no cost to them. And in addition, they get living stipends so that they can cover their expenses while they're learning. After completing the program, they then are eligible for a paid 3-month apprenticeship at Adobe. So they get the opportunity to work with a team and learn from a team as they're building their new skills. Close to half of the folks who then go through that apprenticeship experience then are converted to full-time hires. Those that don't get hired come back to General Assembly and we help them find jobs. And these folks are already in a better position because they have this training, because they have this experience on their resume. So, one of the things that we've been really proud of is that we've worked with now several hundred students, and the diversity of their teams has increased dramatically and has forced them to have some really hard conversations about inclusion and equity within those teams. Part of the advantage, though, is that many of them have said it's really been important for our folks to really see what people with different perspectives bring to the table in terms of our own products and services. It helps us to think differently about our customer base in a way that helps us to build better tools for our customers. And that at the end of the day, that's the real value add that members of the Academy bring to their Adobe teams. Another example, it's a pretty cool one, is from Disney, where I know also has a presence here at PauseFest. This is a woman named Nikki Katz, who actually is now at Bank of America, but she was the creator of a program called Code Rosie. Again, a response to a business problem where there were lack of women engineers within the tech teams at Disney. So they teamed up with us and they said, we want to be able to create training pathways for people from all across Disney. So they put out this signal. They had hundreds of applications for women and non-binary folks to participate in our software engineering program, which we did on site in Los Angeles, contextualized to their tech stack. And we had people from all parts of the of Disney. So that was folks who were working in finance. It was people who were working in park operations at Disneyland. And they've now moved multiple cohorts of folks through this training program, increase the ranks of women and underrepresented groups within their engineering teams, and are looking to expand to other markets, including Orlando in 2020. But I think, in both of these cases, Adobe said, we're not just going to follow our traditional hiring practices, right? We're going to build a whole new pipeline of talent from audiences that historically may never have had these opportunities. Where Disney took the step to say, we're going to look internally at our own people and see who has the potential and the capability to gain a new skill set, and in doing so, increase the diversity of our teams. And so I think that sort of build approach to thinking about talent is really powerful as companies are grappling with these issues. So, here are a few ways to get started. I mean, these are things that we think about all the time at General Assembly as we're working with thousands and thousands of students across all of our campuses around the globe to help them get into jobs. Many of these folks are people that come from a wide range of backgrounds. They were former lawyers or finance professionals. They were Uber drivers or baristas. It really runs the gamut in terms of the lived experience that people bring into GA. So here's some of the things that we think about positioning. How are you positioning your open roles to potential hires? What are the language and signals and cues that are being introduced that may have a candidate be more or less likely to apply for a job on your team? Recruiting, where are you looking for talent? I think this was an important conversation that we had with both Adobe and Disney. How do we sort of go beyond the traditional college recruiting? How do we look inward for folks who may have extraordinary skills that may be overlooked? Screening. What methods are you using to screen candidates? This is a big issue in the States where for many jobs, even very entry-level administrative jobs, a four-year college degree is required. And I think we've been really working with a lot of companies around assessments and skills-based hiring to say, is that actually required for this job? How do you think about skills and competencies rather than certain sort of credentials or markers that you may be using to decide whether or not someone might be eligible or considered for a particular opportunity? Onboarding and supporting, and this is that sort of inclusion process that we were talking about, that ongoing process of creating spaces where we send signals from the beginning. For example, at General Assembly, we have gender-neutral restrooms. We all include our gender pronouns in our Slack handles, which is a really important way to sort of signal to folks who are trans or non-binary that their sort of lived experience is welcome and seen within our community. And that's one of many things that we do. And we're not always successful either, but I think that the kind of ongoing process of grappling with these issues and sending these signals is incredibly powerful to create these types of environments that ensure that people feel not just invited to the party, but encouraged to dance.